Thanks so much for joining our virtual town hall. My name is Maria Elise Divane, and I'm the Executive Director of Educators for Excellence New York. I'm thrilled to see that so many educators are present. I'm grateful that you all can hear me now. E4E was founded with a simple and urgent goal to ensure that teachers have a leading voice in the policies that impact their students and profession. NYC Reads is one great example of that. Thousands of you signed a petition last year calling for coherent, research-based, and culturally responsive instruction, then joined an event in January with Chancellor Banks to share your recommendations for improving the quality of instruction. You wrote op-eds, you hosted events and meetings in your schools, and your hard work paid off. NYC Reads was announced. This change was demanded by educators, and city leadership listened. Some of you may be excited, some of you may be anxious, and some of you may be unsure of what to expect. We've heard all of this from you, and all of those feelings are extremely valid. And in order to get this right, we need to address what educators are feeling and continue to lend your voice and expertise to the policies that impact our classrooms. We also know that there are non-ELA teachers in this room today with us. We have math teachers among us, and we've heard from them that the city should plan to support districts in choosing quality research-based curricula options for math as well. We have also heard of the need to expand NYC Reads to K-8 as a necessary step to ensure that students don't fall further behind. We're excited to continue to work with you to make all of that a reality. So let's get started. Welcome educators, literacy coaches, principals, and district leaders. We also know we have parents and advocates and other fellow New Yorkers among us today that care deeply about this moment. We welcome you and thank you for being here for this important conversation. So to kick us off, I would like to ask all participants to introduce themselves in the chat. The catch is that we are all going to press send at the same time. So please prepare your intro with your name, pronouns, role, borough, and one word that comes to mind when you think about NYC Reads. And we will give you the green light in 60 seconds. Introductions. Thank you all. I am so excited to welcome everyone, and I am proud to introduce our Deputy Chancellor for Teaching and Learning Opportunities, Carolyn Quintana. Quintana began her journey as a 9th grade ELA teacher in the Bronx before moving to administration, where she coached principals across New York City and coordinated literacy efforts in K-12. She also led the Affinity District, where she oversaw the instructional and social-emotional progress of progressive public schools. As the K-12 literacy coordinator, she saw firsthand the impact of a meaningful one-to-one coaching and also believes a collective environment is the key to fostering success. We see and know that Deputy Chancellor Carolyn Quintana is committed to closing longstanding equity gaps and is on a mission to create a high-quality, inclusive, and equitable school experience for educators and students. One of the best ways to respect teachers is by empathetically making space to listen to what they think and what they need to improve students' achievement. And she's here today to share and to listen. Welcome, DC Quintana.
Thank you. Thanks, Maria. Thanks for having me. Good afternoon, Educators for Excellence and friends. I want to thank Evan Stone and Maria Devane for inviting me. And in a moment, Lasana, April, Kate, and Jetta for leading what I am sure is going to be a thoughtful event for and by educators. The last time I addressed E4E as a group in person, as Maria Elise mentioned, you all asked me about the possibility of a move to a single curriculum. Here we are, months later, and we're readying ourselves for the start of the 23-24 school year with the pieces in place to implement illustrative math for Algebra 1. And I want you to keep an eye out for our ongoing and larger STEM work. And then one of three options into reading, wit and wisdom, and expeditionary learning for ELA, along with our prior rollout of K through 2 foundational reading options that included Foundations and Heggerty. We are so excited about phase 1 of this body of legacy work that Chancellor Banks has launched under NYC Reads. I'm often asked why this work and why now? And because when we came in as a new administration, you heard Chancellor Banks say that he wasn't going to play around the margins, and he meant it. Reading is a social justice and a racial equity issue. I heard you all say that. You know that 65% of US fourth graders read below proficient levels, and 21% of adults read below the fifth grade level. Reading impacts our community's well being. Adults with low literacy levels are twice as likely to be unemployed. Beyond the financial burden on the government, that's a real hardship for a family, for our young people, and for folks who are trying to make their way through the world. High school dropouts with low literacy levels earn 42% less than their peers. Low literacy rates are also linked to poor health outcomes and a shorter life expectancy. We need to go back then to what we know works, what is grounded in research, in practice, in evidence, and yes, in the science of how our brains and bodies learn to ensure that every student can and will read well and confidently. Students taught using the science of reading approach have shown 50% reading gains compared to their peers. So you've heard about the impact of designing universally. Well, with every whole person in mind, then we're putting together a method that works for all students and that helps teachers build a greater sense of self-efficacy and of community. This is what we need to do. What helps one of our kids necessarily is good for all of them. So you've heard me say alongside my colleagues, Dr. Ahmed from early childhood and Dr. Rux from school leadership, that from birth through graduation, every school, every classroom, every student will have research-based materials that will provide New York City's children with both what the chancellor refers to as bright starts and bold futures. Big points I want to make sure that come across no matter what I'm able to share with you here today is that literacy is at the core of everything that we do in New York City public schools. We are using approved ELA curricula rooted in the science of reading that is supported by the use of research-based materials for all students, starting in phase 1 with our early childhood and grades K through 5 for ELA and reading. We're going to support educators through ongoing professional development and coaching. I think that's really, really important to note that this is not a one-time PL shot. We are making sure that we are going to support you throughout this process. There's going to be a special focus on students with disabilities and multilingual learners because we want to ensure that every child is getting the support and resources they need to succeed. And as you all go through the processes, we need to learn from your feedback and from what you are developing and sharing as well. So we want to make sure we're staying in touch with our schools as we're going through this. We are enhancing the curricula that has been selected with both New York City made culturally responsive materials. And more importantly, we're providing teachers with training opportunities and guidance so that your teaching moves, your resources, and your environments really are responsive to the specific students in front of you. And so both of those pieces, the resources we help you, that we provide, and the teaching that you get in terms of what it means to be culturally responsive is what's really going to help make sure that kids can connect to what they're learning. We will continue to emphasize the use of screeners to generate information about potential risks and to help determine and use appropriate interventions. Those interventions are where we have already seen tremendous growth for our students. And so we want to make sure that folks understand why they are important and when, an appropriate dosage is and how to use them. What's this all about? So there's currently an equity issue in our schools. You know that. Two-thirds of Black and Latino students aren't reading at grade level. And students in temporary housing are newly arrived students. Students who may have any kind of formal gap in their education can fall behind when they move to a new school or when they're learning in very different ways. And so one of the changes that we want to make sure is happening is that we're emphasizing the importance of a strong instructional core. In fact, this past year, we emphasize the use of a multi-tiered system of supports. And so in your schools, you probably saw a lot of that work. Our superintendents worked with principals on MTSS to make sure that we started with a strong tier one, a strong instructional core, that classroom, right? That space that you've heard us refer to as where kids spend 990 hours a year. To make sure that we're building on that work, we have to ensure that every student in every classroom has access to quality, research-based curricula. And by standardizing the curriculum options in early childhood, elementary school, ELA, and ninth grade algebra, we create greater consistency of practice, of language, and we create the opportunity for teachers and leaders to actually have networks that can learn and share together. This past year, you've heard us talk a lot about the collective, and as Maria Luis mentioned, it's important to me, and about breaking down silos and removing that whole super teacher or super leader myth. To create greater cohesion and a genuine community of learners and practitioners, we're changing from a system where individual schools and educators choose their own programs that may not be aligned to grade level standards and potentially are not practicing those important academic skills, to one where the choices are connected to their peers and are also grounded in what we know works. So what's wrong with the materials that teachers are using right now? Right? What's the problem that we're trying to solve? We know you've been working hard. I've been across your schools, both as a principal coach when I oversaw Affinity and in my role now. Folks have been working hard for years. Still, too many of our elementary school students are not meeting grade level proficiency in reading and math. One of the barriers to strong instruction is the inconsistent usage of grade level and research based curricular and instructional resources. The other is about a teacher's capacity. And so we need to ask, have teachers received the training, the opportunities for meaning making, the time and spaces to learn together with colleagues, and in their context? There's great power to learning about something in your context with your students in real time. We want to make sure that teachers and leaders can answer consistently yes to those questions. So we're investing in training and coaching. Each teacher was offered training during the spring, and makeups are happening right now over the summer. So whether you're a new hire or for some reason weren't able to attend, make sure that you're signing up for those makeups. Each of the vendors will also offer additional PLs as the year progresses. Coaching, at a minimum, will be offered once per unit. So every teacher is going to get at least 8 coaching sessions. And that can look like observations with feedback. It may include team meetings, unpacking lessons or units together, and so much more. Our vendors are available electronically and digitally. And what's best is that we also have support from in-house folks. The UFT Teacher Center is offering training, expanding additional district centers, and will offer year-long coaching support. Our own teams are hiring. So we've got superintendents who are investing in literacy and math specialists. And we've increased the number of interventionists that will be available across our schools. We'll continue to build out the academic intervention specialists that you already were able to work with at each of the districts as well. Too often, teachers have been left on their own and without training to develop their own curriculum. Instead, what we want, and this is what you asked us for, is that time can be spent on developing the strategies to connect with, to engage, and to challenge each of your respective students. School leaders and districts are going to be better positioned and better resourced to support teachers if teachers don't have to create the instructional content from scratch, because now they'll know exactly what you need and how to support you with very specific moves and resources. And so the reality is that a strong curriculum is also a great tool through which we can provide better guidance, and through which a teacher can strengthen their content knowledge and develop new or revised effective teacher moves. Thank you for pushing for that. What can you expect from us? So I mentioned that you'll be paired with a high quality curriculum aligned external professional learning partner that's going to provide ongoing grade specific professional learning to administrators and teachers. They'll be working shoulder to shoulder with our teachers to ensure that each of you are supported in effectively using the curriculum in every classroom. This PL will be a mix of in-person, on-site, and asynchronous. And so far, teachers have received 13.5 hours of professional learning for those who were new to the curriculum, and those who had already been exposed to the curriculum received 9 hours of professional learning, a combination of live and asynchronous. All sessions, are, as I mentioned, are being offered again through the summer, and we'll be able to make the training materials available electronically as well. Teachers who are new to the curriculum for Wit and Wisdom received 16.5 hours of professional learning, and those who were existing received 13.5 hours of PL throughout the spring and summer. And for Expeditionary Learning, that was 24 hours of professional learning throughout the spring and summer. We'll use some of those vendors in addition to, so we've got EL, Great Minds, HMH, Teaching Matters, Teaching Lab, Leading Educators, Gen Ready, Catapult, and the Center for Student Achievement Solutions ready to support you throughout the year. The great news is that some of those are organizations that were already working in your districts and who may already have relationships with your schools. And so we wanted to go ahead and build on some of those existing relationships. 8 sessions per year is the minimum, and SUPs have the discretion to allocate additional sessions to schools based on district-wide needs or individual school-based needs. And as I mentioned before, each of those vendors are going, and in addition to those foundational skills vendors that I mentioned earlier, right? So like Wilson, Hegarty, really great reading, they're going to be providing ongoing PL opportunities throughout the school year so that you have more opportunities to deepen knowledge and understand the curricula. The 23-24 professional learning calendar is currently being finalized, but it'll be available on our website alongside so many of the other resources that we've already made available to schools. We're really excited that many of your principals have already said, these resources are great. In fact, now I've planned my entire PL calendar around them. So we're putting together as much as we can to make sure that you feel supported and you have information at your fingertips. We're going to continue to use the universal reading screeners alongside the curriculum-based measures and assessments to evaluate how students are progressing and responding to the new curriculum. That screening process, right, the universal screening and the secondary screeners for those students who are flagged at risk, paired with the curriculum-based measures, eliminates the need for running records or for you to continue to use those leveled readers or the FMP benchmarks. And so we want to make sure that you understand that while you're implementing something that is new and that we know can work, it's also really important to eliminate those other strategies or resources that may get in the way. Instructional leaders, including principals, APs, teachers, you're going to be supported by our team as well as those district points. In these sessions, you'll get to know the platform, implementation, instructional routines, and we want to make sure that you understand how to unpack Unit 1. Unit 1 was already provided to our teachers, and we want to make sure you're absolutely ready for everything that you need. And we'll continue to make ourselves available. One of the questions I get asked too is about the choices of curriculum and whether or not we think they are culturally relevant. The culturally responsive education is absolutely at the core of all of our work in New York City public schools. And we have already frameworks that we've wanted to build in, or that we have been, building in to our work and to our materials. In addition to that, we have the Hidden Voices Initiative, which is putting homegrown resources in the hands of educators, really specifically about the experiences of our Asian American Pacific Islander communities, LGBTQ community, and we're finishing our curricular resources for both the African diaspora and Black studies. What we've done is take those resources, and we started this work. I've mentioned this to some of you before, but we started that work in the fall. We've taken those resources and pulled very specific units in the curricula that have been selected to pair them and offer parallel texts and different perspectives so that you really do have opportunities for different narratives. There's choice in there, but there's also the opportunity for you to see those as models for how you can work so that teachers can say, sure, this pulled in this text to do this particular assignment or to talk about this particular topic or to teach this particular skill. I can learn from that and bring in something that reflects my community even better. And so, again, using curriculum that is built around what we know works so that you become better at what you're doing. We're also working with each publisher to influence and increase culturally responsive materials in their programs. In addition to that, you've heard me talk about how we are working with them to also influence and increase the access to different languages. Right now, we have access to a Spanish language curriculum only through Arriba, HMH's Arriba, and we want to make sure that we can offer at the very least in Mandarin, in Spanish, and potentially in some of our other top 9 languages, particularly for those schools that are dual language or have a large influx of bilingual programs, a large number of bilingual programs. Teachers are getting all kinds of CRSE training. They'll continue to receive options to participate, and we'll make sure that leaders have those opportunities as well. I think the bottom line is you have access to professional development in a lot of different ways. What we want to make sure is that you're not just being handed a resource. This isn't just some print or plug and play. We want to make sure you know that you have access to us and to support throughout. I know that I'm running out of time. I'm getting some messages about that, and I've spoken for quite a bit. So 1 minute countdown, I'm going to stop there. I'm always available. One of the things that Maria Lee said is that I want to be a listener as well. I make myself available often. It's really important for us to be in your schools, to hear from you, to know what works, to know what doesn't, because that way we're making sure that we're building the best system possible for our leaders, our teachers, and most importantly, our young people in our schools. So thank you very much for everything, and I hope that you have a great session.
All that she just shared with us. I want to also acknowledge the many wonderful questions that we have in the chat. We promise that we will get to those as part of our panel discussion, and if we don't, we will make sure to take a note of them and get answers back to everyone that's participating today. To continue with the introductions and with our panelists, I'd like to take a moment to introduce Jeddah. As a partner of TNTP, Jeddah has supported districts, school leaders, and coaches on improving literacy outcomes for students and supported curriculum implementation in the past few years. She led TNTP's statewide partnership with Tennessee, supporting districts in implementing knowledge-based curricula and shifting their practice in reading foundational skills. Most recently, she led the content design for Tennessee's early reading training to train every literacy teacher in Tennessee in the science of reading and evidence-based literacy practices. In addition, Jeddah led a training of over 1,300 New York teachers for the New York City Teaching Fellows Program. And prior to joining TNTP, Jeddah worked for 7 years as a middle school English teacher and reading specialist here in New York City Public Schools and as an instructional coach and curriculum design specialist. We're grateful that she's here with us to lend her expertise to this conversation. Jeddah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Educators for Excellence, for having me today and for all of the educators on the call and making time for this. I'm going to share a little bit about my own experience around science of reading and HQIM, and hopefully it's helpful and supportive of the conversation we're having here today. A few years ago, as mentioned in my intro, I got the opportunity to work on a big partnership between my organization, TNTP, and the Tennessee State Department of Education. This was a huge initiative in Tennessee, very similar to what New York City is doing now, to shift their approach to instruction to ensure that every student in the state was getting access to evidence-based literacy instruction and grade level content. TNTP was selected by the state to design a training on evidence-based literacy instruction for all literacy teachers in the state. It was a 2-week course, so not just a one-shot PD, but a long, hefty course. Over the past few summers, we've trained over 30,000 teachers in the state in science of reading and what research-based practices look like in classrooms and in high-quality instructional materials. My role on the team was to oversee the content design of these courses. And as a result, I learned a lot about what it takes to shift practice at such a large scale. And while Tennessee and New York City are wildly different places, not just in musical taste, but a variety of ways, there are a lot of similarities in how Tennessee approached this big change and how New York City is approaching it now. And there is certainly much to learn as we stand here in New York City at the precipice of a big change. And it mirrors a lot of what TNTP as an organization has learned as we support large systems across the country. So I thought it could be helpful to share a few key lessons that I try and keep in mind in this work. So the first one is that materials alone, instructional materials alone, are a necessary but insufficient solution. So HQIM is absolutely an essential foundation for ensuring equity of access to grade level content for all students in a system. But it's just that, it's a foundation, and it becomes the foundation that great teaching can be built on. But educators need, as Deputy Chancellor Quintana mentioned, support. They need coaching. They need ongoing professional learning. They need the opportunity to collaborate with their excellent, thoughtful colleagues in order to bring those materials to their full potential. Our training that we did in Tennessee was really focused on trying to find a balance between building teachers' background knowledge in the research base behind reading acquisition, and also pairing that with very practical classroom-based instructional practices. Teachers need to not only know, that research and evidence base, but they need to know, what does this look like in my curriculum? What are the everyday classroom routines that can support this, right? How do I facilitate a chaining routine for students? What do I listen for? How do I give them feedback? So finding that balance in the professional learning, I think, is really important. I think New York City is making a really historic investment in teacher professional learning and coaching as a part of this initiative. And I can't understate how important that will be to the success of this project. And I say this as a former New York City DOE teacher myself. I know that it is essential that teachers not only feel supported, but will see the impact on student learning as a result of that really ongoing professional learning and coaching support. The second lesson I will highlight is that this is a change that takes training and support for educators at all levels of the system. This is also something that I was glad to hear Deputy Chancellor Quintana lift up, but teachers and leaders have to share in this learning process together. This isn't something happening to teachers, but with them. And, teachers in your classrooms, you are going to be the epicenter, the locus of this change, but your school leaders have to be shoulder to shoulder in doing this work to not only they themselves understand the research and evidence base behind these instructional materials, but to know the curriculum well themselves. They need to understand what it looks like in practice, right? It is on leaders to really set and hold a clear shared vision for what evidence-based literacy instruction looks like across classrooms in their buildings. And it takes leaders having that deep knowledge of curriculum in order to do that. In Tennessee, while it was not required for them, we had many school and district leaders who took the 2-week course right alongside their teachers. And it's that type of shared learning that really leads to long-term change. The last lesson I'll mention is that the change process takes time and persistence. Tennessee first adopted statewide curriculum change in 2019. This year, in 2023, they saw historic gains on their third grade reading scores. Their scores have entirely bounced back from their pandemic learning loss. This year, they saw the largest increase in a single year of third grade reading scores since they updated their standards in 2017. But that is after several years of training and support for educators and multiple years shift in the student experience. And they're still not where they want to be. They still have much work to do to ensure all students are proficient in reading. So I say that to say that New York City is at the very beginning of this journey, and it will certainly have ups and downs, especially for those of you who are classroom teachers. And I know from my own experience as a New York City teacher that this journey is absolutely worth it. I've had a front row seat to seeing that happen across a huge state system, and I'm excited to watch New York City do the same.
I'd like to continue with the introductions of one of our great teachers. Kate is a veteran New York City special education teacher. She has been teaching for the New York City Public Schools since 1997 and taught students in grades 1 through 5 in general education, ICT, and 12 to 1. Kate served on the Culturally Relevant Education Committee with E4E, a group of E4E teacher leaders that were instrumental in getting New York City Public Schools to commit to quality ELA curricula. In her words, she is especially lucky to have a job that she absolutely loves. She's a single mom and proud to have sent all of her 3 children to New York City Public Schools. And with us, Kate.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here, and to tell you the truth, I've been waiting 20 years for this. And so I stand here to advocate for New York City Reads. As everyone knows, less than 50% of our New York City children can read proficiently. And even when the National Reading Panel came out in 2000 with recommendations for the right tools and strategies for children, which includes the 5 pillars of reading, which are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. So even when we knew that that was the right way to go, we did not. And so I'm very proud to be here today with Deputy Chancellor Quintana and Chancellor Banks and Mayor Adams, because they listened to the voices of teachers. And as a member of the CRE committee, we found that less than 22% of teachers said that they had curriculum that was appropriate or accessible or engaging for their children. So now I think that our educational leaders are really showing gratitude for the teachers because they are implementing new policies. And we've just heard all about the professional development. And the one thing that we haven't really mentioned so far is that not only will the curriculum be culturally responsive, it also is going to be knowledge building. So that's one of the main reasons that balanced literacy failed, because it wasn't knowledge building. If every child is reading a different book and the teacher's reading something else out loud, how are the children supposed to build knowledge? So that's what these 3 curriculum have as a real guiding force. So now one of the other great things about this is because now that we're going to have these high quality materials, teachers are not going to have to spend hours or money building their own curriculum. One thing I would like to also include or add is that I have personally witnessed children, both gen ed children, special ed children, all the children in our unique populations with both the EL curriculum and Wit and Wisdom. And I have personally seen children grow. I've seen them be joyful, and I've seen the strong gains that they've made. So I know, and I'm so excited because I really believe that this is going to work. So this is an epic victory for our children, and it's a true response to the literacy crisis that's taking place in our country. And I really, really ask you to join us in making the New York City Reads initiative a colossal success. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kate. I'd like to introduce my co-partner in this work at E4E. He's our Senior Deputy Director of Campaigns here in New York, and he will guide us through the rest of this agenda today on New York City Reads. I want to make sure that everyone also knows that we will and have acknowledged all of your questions. We will get to them, and if we don't answer all of them in the duration of our conversation today, we will make sure to get back to everyone. Without further ado, Mr. Lasana Tunikael.
Thank you so much, Maria Elise. Well, it's such a pleasure to be here with all of these educators and leaders in New York City public schools so that we can collaborate as a community to ensure that NYC Reads has a successful implementation and rollout, and that it do what it's supposed to do in enhancing the literacy skills for New York City public school students. So I would like to introduce a longtime E4E-er, since we were on 39th Street, and that's Miss April Rose. And April is a 20-plus year veteran teacher in Queens. Her current school is PS 132, the Ralph Bunche School. And they were early adopters of the interreading to respond to their students' literacy needs. So she is drawn to the strength of the idea of teachers having a voice in education policy as well as curricula materials for students. Hi, April.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be part of this conversation today. Just like Lasana was talking about, my school, which I was really happy about, we were one of the first people during the hybrid year to say, let's look at what our curriculum is looking like right now. What do our kids really need? Especially because we wanted to make sure that we met our kids' needs, especially due to COVID loss. So when this curriculum came about after my principal had purchased the leveled reading program, we said, hey, we have some extra stuff that's coming. Let's check this out. So we piloted it in 2 of our classes, and we saw that it was really working. And from there, we just continued to go on with it. And as a team, as a school leadership team, and as an instructional leadership team, we moved on with it on a whole school front. We utilized both the reading and the writing part of the HMH into reading program. And this year, well, I guess we could consider this kind of our 3rd year going into it. So I'm really excited to continue the conversation with everyone.
Thank you, April. Thank you so much, April. So before we get to our panelists for them to share their expertise and experiences, we'd like to hear from our participants, our educators. So if you will, please click the link in the chat and share your experience with the following curriculum: Into Reading, Wit and Wisdom, and Expeditionary Learning. All right, we'll give maybe 30 more seconds for you to share that. Okay, we're seeing some who hasn't had any experience thus far. There are questions about which is best. Hidden Voices helps. And some has piloted at least 1 unit from HMH. Thank you for sharing. We see some common threads there. So please keep this page open as we will be going back and forth during this town hall as it relates to that. So now our panelists will begin to share their roses and thorns with the respective curriculums. We've heard some introductory experiences from our panelists as it relates to these curriculums. So if they can expand a little more on at least 1 rose and 1 thorn for each curriculum. And we'll start with April to get us kicked off.
Okay. I definitely don't want to be a negative Nelly, so I'm definitely going to start with the positive first. What we really liked about the program is how rich and authentic the texts were. We felt that there was just aspects of learning that they were really tapping into, especially when we first started looking at it for second grade. They were even they were talking about like civics lessons, but at a way that the students can actually understand it and relate it to them. And I thought that that was just like really insightful and great for the students. The materials that HMH provides as well is just a wealth of knowledge. So you really do not have to really pull your hair out to try to pull and get all these other items to just do so much supplementing. So that, I think that's a really great part of it, because we teachers do work really hard. I'm not saying you don't make it your own still within your classroom, but you don't have to go so far and recreate the wheel. A lot of the information at HMH into reading is presented to you, is given to you. They give you a lot. And I will also give kudos to the PD, because we started this without the big district-wide support or the city support. We started this early on. They provided a lot of professional development on their website. So even if you just logged into your Teach Hub, and if there was questions you had, you were able to go there. The Teacher Corner, there were different Facebook groups that they linked you up with. So you had camaraderie, you had support. There was always a wealth full of knowledge and resources that you could tap into. The only thorn, which kind of makes my school unique. So it goes to the whole idea about the fact that no curriculum is perfect. No program is perfect, and that you really have to do what's also in the best interest for your students. So we had tried out the writing part of the HMH into reading. However, because we felt that it was a little too disjointed, because we even tried it where we mapped it out to make them match to the correct modules. So to give you an example, we wanted to make sure that if we were doing narrative fiction reading, that there was narrative writing that goes along with it, not so disjointed that we're going in from narrative fiction and then I'm writing about informational text, or I'm doing an opinion piece. So we wanted to make sure that those things were a little bit more aligned, and we did try it where we tried to align it, but because the writing is truly separate from the reading, we as a school community, we decided as an instructional leadership team that we would not necessarily take on the writing again this year. So we're actually using another writing program that is research based, but that's what we're going to be using, because we found that that was a little bit better for our students as far as correlating the modules and the genres, so that the students wouldn't get so confused, and it would just, the foundation of writing, which is so important, is one of our instructional focuses for our school. We wanted to make sure that that was clear and evident for students. So that's my tidbit.
Thank you, April. Kate, share us one rose and one thorn.
Sure, I'd love to. Definitely my rose is that because these curriculum are knowledge-based, you have this amazing community that gets developed in your class because everyone is studying the same topic. Maybe it's frogs, maybe it's the American Revolution. So everyone is learning the same thing at the same time. Plus, there are I'm not going to say easy. That's easily accessed by everyone in the classroom. So for example, this year I had a young girl who had significant dyslexia, and she struggled all year to get the TH sound in words like this, that, and those. And, she never really, I'm sorry to say, she never really mastered it yet. But because of the wit and wisdom curriculum that we were using, she felt like she was on top of the world. She felt like she was so smart and she was so competent. And a lot of that has to come from, I think, the fluency part. And so I've also had that positive experience with EL. And it's because everyone's reading the same book at the same time, the teacher can find the passages or the parts of a book that the children who are either high achieving or low achieving can totally understand. And then my thorn for the curriculum is that they may not be as culturally responsive as we would like. So for example, in the fourth grade wit and wisdom curriculum, which is all about the heart, and it's about the heart literally, like how the heart functions, and it's also about the heart figuratively. So you study some great-hearted people. So unfortunately, the Wit and Wisdom curriculum only includes white great-hearted people. And when it came to the first surgeon to do an open heart surgery, they chose a white man. So then as the teacher, you see this glaring omission, and then you have to find, people of color who did exactly the same things, all amazing things. But I'm sure that these publishers are going to make some accommodations for New York City, since we're such a large buyer.
Thank you, Kate. And it was encouraging to hear Deputy Chancellor Q mention that NYC Public Schools is working with those vendors so that they can shore up the cultural responsiveness of their materials. So now move over to Jetta. Please share us a rose and thorn from your experience.
Sure. I will say, I'm just going to share sort of a rose and thorn across these three curricula. I will say, in all cases, the shift here to ensuring that every kid in every classroom in New York City is going to have access and opportunity to engage in grade level text is a huge rose. And the fact that those texts are rich texts that are worthwhile of children's time, worthwhile of their creative thinking and engagement is a huge rose. I think the focus in these curricula around being knowledge building curricula is a huge asset that New York City teachers will experience. To be able to go through a unit where over the course of the unit, by reading rich text, children develop schema and knowledge and vocabulary around important content and topics that positively impacts their reading comprehension for the rest of their lives is a huge contribution of these curricula. I will say a thorn that I have experienced supporting districts and states who are making the same shift is the learning curve that educators are inevitably going to go through in this. So challenges with learning the different instructional routines for their curricula. EL has very specific instructional routines that it uses. Wit and Wisdom has its own. HMH has its own. And learning those specific curricula and how to make them work for yourself as a teacher and for the students in front of you in your classroom is a learning curve. I'll also say that inevitably in the first year of implementation, pacing is a real challenge, right? You can look at these lessons and feel totally overwhelmed by getting through all of the content in the lesson. And so having that strong professional learning support that helps you figure out where and how to prioritize what's most important in that lesson and to help you with the overall pacing, I think will be incredibly important in this first year.
Classroom as far as also training teachers, et cetera. So I would now direct the participants, our educators who are with us today, to please ask any questions on that same slide in the Nearpod. Where now there's a slide that's populating here. So if you will, drop your questions that you may have for the panel, and we will take some time to at least get a few of those questions answered. And those that we may not get to, we will continue in our partnership with NYCPS to forward those and get those answers out to you in the nearest future. So we'll give a few minutes now to drop your questions on the slide. So we have a question here. How will these changes affect MOSL options and advanced ratings during the rollout? And anyone who would like to step up, please answer. And that's probably to Deputy Q, right? Deputy Chancellor Q.
Sure, I'll tackle it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Mosul is a multi institution, multi-organization decision. It's not one, regrettably, that the Department of Teaching and Learning gets to make on their own, right? And so Mosul are selected by teachers within their school environments, and our labor partners are a really big part of this conversation. So we're asking folks to be really thoughtful about what makes sense given that we're moving in the direction of the science of reading. What are those options that are really going to be reflective of the kind of work that you are doing, and making sure not to choose those options that are actually going to move against what you're learning and what you know works. We are in conversations with our labor partners. This year was a year of making sure that contracts were strong and supported our teachers, and so that was not the conversation that was at the top of their priority list. So we're making sure that that's something that we are going to tackle in for the next selection period. In the meantime, I'm asking and encouraging folks to really just be thoughtful about what makes the most sense and is not going to make me have to do extra work or work that does not align to what I know is how students learn best.
Great, thank you. Let's look at another question here. Will the NYC Reads be aligned with the creative curriculum for preschool? Will there be additional materials provided for the child care sites?
As far as the additional materials, I'm not sure. Dr. Ahmed can absolutely answer those questions for you, but the alignment is incredibly important. And so one of the things that's really wonderful about creative curriculum is that it really looks at developing an inquiry-based approach to teaching and learning, which is you'll see in our citywide instructional priority and levers for change very much present. And in terms of what it connects to with NYC Reads, right? NYC Reads is a move that we are making to make sure that folks are choosing curricula that is grounded in research, evidence, and good practice. And most importantly, and as you heard folks already here say, right, Jetta mentioned it more than once, the curriculum is not enough. It really is about teachers' pedagogical moves, how it is that teachers engage students, how they make them feel like they belong and that they can succeed and really develop strong academic mindsets, how they're going to lead students to really develop critical thinking and problem solving skills. And that happens through the continuous development of teacher pedagogy and practice, but also that of leaders, right? And so that's going to keep going. And that connects necessarily to what's happening in creative curriculum. The other piece is that creative curriculum provides the children with the foundation through sounds and music and rhythmic and manipulatives and different types of moves that really connect to the way that we want kids to learn reading in the upper ears. And so we're very thoughtful about making sure that this is a birth to 12 approach, and that we're in phase 1, so we're only working with a small number of folks now, small for New York City, very large compared to other places, but yeah, necessarily aligned.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for maybe one more before we move forward. Does the curriculum lend to implementing project-based assessments in the classroom?
I love this question. So whomever it is who put it on there, please invite me to your school. I absolutely want to come. I hope so. If it is not, then it is. And I think I keep going back to what Jetta was talking about, right? The curriculum is a foundation, and that's great, and we need it, and it's a really strong one, and it's aligned to the standards, and so it tells us at minimum what children should be able to do. And as you heard both teachers say, right, it provides you with a start so that you don't necessarily have to be looking for things all the time, but you still get to add value to what you're doing. And I appreciated hearing both Kate and April talking about that value and that creativity. It's the way that you're going to engage and excite your students. And so that means really thinking about what are the ways that you develop instruction that is not only going to do that knowledge building, but is really going to lead to deeper learning. And that means thinking about the different ways that we engage students in practice. And that's about hands-on real-world opportunities, and project-based learning is absolutely part of that. And so we want folks to do that work. And in fact, our literacy team or literacy collaborative is working on what it looks like to make sure that we're doing this type of teaching when we want kids to be learning the foundational reading skills that they absolutely need alongside building not only the knowledge, but these 21st century skills. And so that does and will look sometimes like those performance-based assessment tasks, and it does and will look like some of those other pieces. And if it means that, folks need to learn ways to do that, or that we work together with schools that are already doing that well, we absolutely want to do that. So if you have great examples or emerging examples of what that can look like, we want to come see. We want to be able to share your journey and talk about both some of the challenges and when you succeed.
Great. Do any of other panelists have any thoughts on the project-based piece?
And wasn't kidding. Please invite me to the school.
Jetta?
I think Jetta has a question. Yeah.
Well, I was going to add to that point that,
Oh, good. Okay.
I was going to say, like, I think all of them have strong examples of this. This is one place that EL really shines. They have a lot of really strong project-based assessments built into the curriculum. And I think the experience that teachers will have with that this year that will be hopefully refreshing is the curriculum is building that in for you, right? And it's tying it to a whole unit around the texts and tasks that students are doing to prepare them for that project-based assessment. And so instead of teachers having to create that themselves and spend time and hours and collaboration with colleagues thinking of how to design that, instead they're really thinking about, how do I support my students with accessing that assessment? And how do I make this work for the students in my classroom? And so it really is, a value add for teachers in terms of where you spend your time to have that built into your instructional materials.
Great point. Appreciate that.
Great. So I think now, okay, we have one more here. So my school is in the second group for implementation. What will we be doing this year? Are there any suggestions for phase 2 schools as they prepare to first choose which one they'll be using, and then what will they be doing in the meantime until the second phase rolls out next year?
Yeah, I don't know if that question is for me, April or Kate, or either one of you from phase 2 schools, or otherwise I can tackle that. But if you want to talk about your own experiences, and then I can follow up.
I'm just transferring to a school in District 1. And so they were using Teachers College up until a few years ago. And then they somehow just made the lucky choice of choosing Into Reading. So this is going to be, I think, their third year of Into Reading. And then, so they're just sticking with the same curriculum, and then they'll be switching to EL for the next year.
It's part of that. Go ahead, April. Yep.
I was just going to add, just based on my experience, I always feel, when you have these discussions with your admin or your whole school community, you really got to make a decision about what you think is the best thing for your school. And I think that when we started it on a trial basis, because we had that ability at that time to do that, I think that was like really beneficial, because we were able to see if it was worthwhile. And, so far, I feel like the program has been working, but, just based on the things that I mentioned before, just the things we still got to work through. But I still think it's worthwhile to at least try it out. Look at the material. The material is there. Take one small group and work with it. That's what we did when we were doing it during the hybrid year. If you're able to do that, that would be my biggest suggestion.
Yeah, that's great. And I was just going to add something very similar. The schools that we have been talking to, or schools actually who started this before we even officially launched NYC Reads, we're doing exactly what you two mentioned, right? That is either continuing with something until they're able to see and learn from other schools that are doing something different, and then they'll begin the implementation with the supports that they'll be getting through the phased-in implementation. Or as you mentioned, April, trying out a unit here or a unit there and seeing if it fits, right? If it really works for your school and your school community. And I think that there's great value in that. So we're referring to this as a learning year. And very soon, leaders will be making choices about their curricular options, and we'll start the training cycle again, and we'll make sure that materials are in and everything before the next school year begins. But we want to make sure, and before that, obviously, superintendents have to engage their communities, have to make sure they're having conversations with parents and leaders. The best thing is to try things out and to go see it. Find schools where folks are rolling this work out, where they may have been doing even before NYC Reads, and ask them about what has worked and what has been challenging, and what a school would need to know or do in order to be able to roll this out successfully. And then, make the best decisions for the students in front of you. Importantly, too, is to stop doing the things that are going to not lead to strong reading practices. And Jen, I don't know, with your experiences actually having already been through this process, if maybe you have some advice too.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard you mention a couple of times that like stopping doing things. I think that's a really important point, that you're not just adding on, but you're actually thinking about the practices that align to your new instructional materials. I mean, I think the other thing I would add is that some of the professional learning routines that we at TNTP have seen, and I've seen in my work, be most beneficial for teachers in curriculum implementation are really strong unit preparation, really strong lesson preparation, and student work analysis, and doing those things in collaboration with your thoughtful colleagues. And that those are instructional routines that, whether you're using a curriculum this year or next year, you all and your grade teams can start to hone and start to think about, how do we want to use these to support our implementation of whatever curriculum our district ends up selecting. So if I were in a phase 2, I think the advice around piloting is a great one. And then 2, how do we start to build some of those professional learning structures that we want in our building to help us be successful?
Thank you. Loving the trends that I'm hearing around the village, right? This collaborative piece that includes all of the stakeholders that are needed to ensure that our kids get the resources and our educators get the resources that they need to really implement this intentionally in a way that raises the level of literacy among New York City public school students. So now we're seeking to take a little post check with our group around a couple of questions. So we'll give them the opportunity to weigh in to some of these questions that I'll ask. You will see the next slide populating on your screen. And the first poll is around the question or the statement. Poll number 1, I think NYC Reads is being implemented effectively. Oh, let's rewind. So we're going to start with, literacy coaching is vital to being an effective K-5 teacher. Agree, disagree, not sure. Literacy coaching is vital to being an effective K-5 teacher. All right. Poll number 2. The statement is, I have been included as a stakeholder in the NYC Reads rollout and implementation. Agree, not sure, disagree. I have been included as a stakeholder in the NYC Reads rollout and implementation. And number 3. I think NYC Reads is being implemented effectively. Right. Are we able to see the results of the polls? Literacy coaching is vital to being an effective K through 5 teacher. I think we overwhelmingly agree with that. Thank you for participating and sharing. I've been included as a stakeholder in the NYC Reads rollout and implementation. Seems to be a little less than half that agree with that. Yes. And finally, I think NYC Reads is being implemented effectively, yes. People are still voting, and you can see the results there. And this is what this event, the purpose and intentionality around this event is to inform and share and get some questions asked, and also continue the touch points of an effective partnership between educators and NYC Public Schools, and E4E playing its part in that, E4E New York. And here are results for the third one. Do we have it? Okay. So in the interest of time, we're going to keep the program moving. Now that we've heard from educators who've experienced the curricula selection firsthand, those who have dived into questions that came around this program and how we feel included in the process, we want to think about how this can be synthesized into concrete action next steps. So when partnering with E4E, you all have the opportunity to join committees on our campaigns that advance policy change in education. An essential part of our current campaign was surveying educators across the districts to see what they knew about NYC Reads and how they experienced it thus far. They shared that they needed ongoing support throughout the program in areas in all of the areas. And again, Deputy Chancellor Quintana spoke to that. Access to remote professional learning opportunities all year round. Access to the support of instructional coaches who are experts in the assigned curriculum, but they also know how to support application in specific contexts. They asked for transparency around the observation process. Clear timeline for when educators will be expected to effectively implement the science of reading. So, given those, and again, we heard that there's some alignment with what the needs are and what NYCPS is implementing and has rolled out thus far, and the plans for rollout in the near future. So we want to hear what you think about all these points. Open up the Nearpod tab once again to click the link in the chat to vote for your top 3. And it will populate on your screen, excuse me, momentarily. Looking here at our top 3 results, year-round PL. Okay, give a couple more seconds for all of the tallies to come in. Okay, do we have the results? Not sure about everyone in attendance, but I'm getting so excited about this implementation and the fact that this conversation is happening with all stakeholders involved. It's very exciting, and the possibilities are definitely exciting for our kids. Yes, let's see those results now. Top 3 results are year-round professional learning, instructional coaches, timely and actionable data releases. Timely and actionable data releases. All right, thank you for weighing in. So I will pose this question back to our panelists. What do you think we can ask and collaborate on together to make sure educators are receiving these identified supports? Oh, it seems that Deputy Chancellor Quintana had to leave. So again, we will forward with her all of your thoughts that we've captured during this process going forward. All right, so again, we'd like to thank everyone who came and participated and shared their thoughts and feelings around NYC Reads. This has been a very fruitful conversation. I'd like to thank the panelists for joining us and sharing their experiences and their expertise around NYC Reads. And the E4E, our staff will share out a Google form in the chat to sign up for next steps. There are opportunities, again, to get involved, to inform this process going forward, to advocate and continue so that we as a community can hold one another accountable to ensure the effective implementation of NYC Reads in both phases over the next 2 years.